Welcome back. We're here with Jesse Draper speaking about the do's and don'ts for investing and finding venture capital.
Before I invest in a startup, I ask about 1,000 questions. I want to know everything about you. I want to throw you curveballs. I want to know you're going to roll with my crazy out there ideas and be open to new ones. I want to know that you are going to make my money back. I want to know that you see the same vision I see, but you will take the company there. And I want to know that you will get to the billion-dollar marketplace and not just be looking for the quick exit and to build a quick company, because as far as investors go, that doesn't make a return for me. And I want to know that you are going to knock it out of the park. But at the end of the day, I can do all the diligence I want, and it comes down to a real gut check, because I'm betting on 2-3 founders in a room building a crazy idea, and there's not a whole lot of diligence at the end of the day you can do on that type of company. You can do all the research in the world, and you get hit with a storm, and you had no idea that was going to happen. And so, I look for everything I possibly can and try not to miss anything. I can do a light background check, but I've even seen incredible companies come out of prison. So, it's really the Wild West, and there's an art to it, and I think it's about pattern recognition and doing as much research as you can and being prepared for those things to come. Also, I want to know that these founders are going to go to war with me. I really try to get to know them in different settings, and it's a long journey. It's like a marriage that you can never get out of because you're in business together, and there will be really great times and there will be really, really tough times, and you need to know that they're willing to face both of them by your side and optimistically. 3 things I look for when I'm trying to dig up an incredible opportunity is, 1, is it in a unique market? Is it in a market that's, if the market has way too many competitors, it's less interesting to me. And so I really want to make sure that they're doing something unique and different and disruptive, and that they'll stand out from the crowd. I also look for a founder or founders. I prefer co-founders and complementary skill sets. And I prefer to know that it's a killer team with expertise in areas that apply to this particular business, and if they don't have that expertise, how are they going to fill in the gaps? And maybe they'll bring in experts or what have you. But I think that really a great team with complementary skill sets is incredibly important to me. And then some kind of traction, whether that be 100,000 email addresses, $1 million in revenue, or simply a great idea for a prototype. Because some people going after venture capital dollars, they just can't afford to create, to do the first shipment of their product. So if it's a great hardware company and they just want to build the first prototype, or they want to build the first 500, they need to raise some money because it's very expensive to do that. And so I've even seen clay prototypes of the first hardware device. Do pitch investors and reach out to everyone you possibly can. Don't think that there's only one way to get to your goal. So what I would say to that is that a lot of founders come to me and say, we're building this huge business. We can only drive the car this way, and we can only go like this, and this is the only way that it'll work, otherwise it won't work. I do not want to invest in that particular company, because that company doesn't know how to pivot and doesn't realize that they might have to pivot. I want to know that a founder is open to new ideas and open to just making it work. I think coachability is a very, very important thing, and you need to be willing to hear other perspectives and ideas and take them all in and run your company accordingly. Because I don't think it's safe to think that no one should think they're the smartest person in the room. You can learn from anyone. I can learn from you, you can learn from me, and I think that is how you should approach your company. If you're starting your company the dream would be you bootstrap the whole thing yourself. I've seen incredible businesses that were started with $900 and this founder was working 3 different waitressing jobs and they're doing fantastic and millions in revenue now, all the way to companies who had to go and raise 10 million in order to even really get off of the ground. So what I would say is the dream is to own your whole company, because if you were going to sell Instagram for $1 billion to Facebook, wouldn't you rather own the whole thing? But if you realize that when you are bootstrapping your company, that you are growing so fast that you literally can't afford to keep up with the growth, that would be a great time to raise. You figure out where you're stretched thin and hire, you figure out what you need and bring it in, and that would be a good time to raise venture capital. But not all companies need venture capital. There's also other opportunities like credit lines. So if you're an inventory related business especially, often people get a credit line and then they don't have to give away any equity, and as long as they know they can pay it back. I think there's a lot of different options that you should definitely explore, but if I'm an investor, I would tell you as a founder, you want to own as much of your company as possible. And your investor actually is invested in you owning as much as possible too, because they want you to feel incentivized to grow this thing and take it all the way. But as an investor, I also want to own as much of your company as possible. So I think those are just a couple of the things to think about as far as raising dollars. Back in the day, women were in charge of the household and men handled the pocketbooks. And we're still catching up. And we're getting there. I think we're making huge strides, but we need more men to invest in women-run businesses and more women with resources to invest in women-run businesses. Women traditionally are terrified of risk. And so what I say is be risky, take a risk, invest in a great female founder or in a great fund run by a woman, or just take a risk with your capital if you have those resources. And men, it's not about a man haters club. I love men. We want equality. Men just control the majority of the capital. So it's about figuring out how to balance that out and making sure that men are also investing in diverse teams and not what they're typically used to. I think great founders come in all shapes and sizes and ages and races and genders, and that's what we should be investing in. The data is there that diverse companies with core teams of many different backgrounds drive huge successes, much bigger returns, and they're better and more well-balanced companies in every way. So I think those are things that we should be thinking about, and all of that will help spread the wealth, and that's really what is important to me at Halogen Ventures. You need to be confident in your company and the business that you're building. And if you need to go raise venture capital, you should just assume you're going to take 100 meetings. When I raised my fund, I took 157 meetings and I closed about 40 of those. And you should just assume you're going to take 100 meetings. If you only take 10, lucky you. Once you get to about 30, you should probably rejigger a few things based on the feedback you've gotten. And when you hear some feedback a couple of times, add a slide in your deck or add some specific information to your pitch that addresses those concerns. And it's always good if you get a no to go back and say, hey, what were your biggest concerns? Because then you actually create a relationship with these people, and it's not just a no. And you should never take a no personally. No's come from all different places. They come from places like, certain investors have buckets to fill. They have to invest in a certain amount of biotech and a certain amount of seed stage companies and a certain amount of Series B stage companies. And maybe they've already done that and then you met with them. So it's not a no about you. You should actually find out specifically what it was about, and usually it has nothing to do with you. Everyone has different strategies on investing, and so I think you just need to realize that and assume you're going to have 100 meetings, because you will just be pleasantly surprised if you have less than that. Really, if you are actively seeking venture capital, really try your best to get an introduction. I mean, I've even had many degrees of separation introductions where they reached out to a friend of mine on LinkedIn, who reached out to a friend of mine who, it helps me vet a little, and it also helps, it also shows that you're resourceful, honestly. But cold pitches are great too. We do look at cold pitches if you really don't know anyone in the arena of technology, but I feel like technology is a fairly small world. We're very accessible online. Most VCs should be accessible online. But I would say, one, try and get an introduction that kind of pops you up to the top. And then two, just realize, like, you know what you're building. As far as founders go, I take 10, 15 pitches a day sometimes. And just realize every once in a while you should ask an investor a question about themselves that will actually make you more memorable. You know, everyone wants to share, needs to share. And if you were going to ask an investor one question that would help you, I've never had anyone ask me this. You should ask them, have you seen any companies like mine recently? Because I guarantee they have seen everything close to what you're building, and you'll learn from them. And I think they'll also learn you'll learn more about more competitors in your industry and how the investor is vetting these deals. And it's like, okay, well, why'd you say no to them? Or why'd you say no to them? And I think that would be a very good question to ask any investor, because this is what they do on a daily basis, is they see thousands of companies in the same industries. So they know much more about you than you even realize.
Beyonce wasn't built in a day, people.